Two men in police uniforms showed up at his house, claiming to be from the HOA. They handed him a bogus notice and threatened him with fines. But his property wasn't even part of an HOA. Then one of them pulled out a taser, aimed at his dog. That's when his K9 unit, Titan, decided enough was enough, and what happened next would leave everyone speechless. But let's start from the beginning. It started like any other Saturday morning. The sun was warm against my back as I crouched in the dirt, pulling weeds from my vegetable garden. The quiet hum of the neighborhood buzzed faintly in the distance. A lawnmower a few houses down, the occasional bark from a dog, the rustling of the wind through the trees. Peaceful, familiar. Until it wasn't. I noticed them immediately. Two men walking up my driveway, their polished black boots hitting the pavement in sync. They wore dark blue police-style uniforms, the letters HOA printed boldly across their chests. Something about them felt off. Maybe it was the way the taller one moved. Too stiff, too controlled. Or maybe it was the fact that my neighborhood didn't have an HOA. "Excuse me," the tall one barked. He was heavy-set, muscular beneath the fabric, with a buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses that reflected my confused expression back at me. "You can't have this fence here. It violates HOA guidelines." I straightened, brushing dirt from my hands. "What guidelines?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "I've never seen you guys before, and this property isn't part of an HOA." The other one, younger, thinner, with nervous eyes that darted toward the taller man, stepped forward, holding out a folded paper. "We're with the HOA Enforcement Division. This is a formal notice to comply." I took the paper and scanned it. A lot of dense legal language, but none of it made sense. Wrong codes, wrong format, wrong tone. My grip tightened. "This is my property," I said coldly, my voice sharpening. "You have no jurisdiction here." Buzzcut stepped closer, his mirrored sunglasses flashing under the sun. His hand dropped casually to the baton on his hip. "Sir, failure to comply will result in fines and possible removal of the structure." That's when I saw it. The badge on his chest wasn't real. The emblem was flat, laminated, the kind you'd see hanging from a gas station keychain. My pulse quickened. My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" I demanded, stepping back. Buzzcut's mouth twisted into a smirk. "We're here to keep the neighborhood in order." Without another word, they started toward my backyard gate. "Hey!" I snapped. "You're trespassing." They ignored me. Buzzcut unlatched the gate and pushed it open, stepping onto my property like he owned the place. My eyes narrowed, my fists curled, and then I heard it, a low, guttural growl. From behind the fence, Titan's ears were flat against his head, his body low to the ground. His amber eyes locked onto the intruders with predatory focus. His muscles coiled beneath his sleek coat, vibrating with tension. He was waiting for my command. Buzzcut's hand shifted toward the baton. My heart hammered in my chest. "Call off the dog," Buzzcut said, his voice dark and cold. I didn't move. Titan's growling intensified, sharp and feral. "You've got 3 seconds to step off my property," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through my veins. Buzzcut smiled faintly, hand tightening on the baton. The younger guy looked between us, shifting nervously. 3 seconds. 2. Titan's growl turned into a deep bark, cutting through the tension like a blade. Buzzcut's hand twitched toward his belt. My stomach dropped. "Last warning," Buzzcut said. My pulse hammered in my ears. The air felt razor sharp. And that's when Titan lunged. Buzzcut shoved open the gate like he owned the place, his heavy boots crunching against the gravel as he stepped onto my property. The audacity of it made my blood burn. Titan was on his feet in an instant, his bark sharp and furious, cutting through the tense afternoon air like glass. His sleek muscles rippled beneath his coat, his amber eyes locked onto Buzzcut with predatory intensity. "Sir, Control your dog, Buzzcut barked, his voice edged with forced authority. You're on my property, I roared, stepping toward them, fists clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. Get out, now! Buzzcut smirked, that cold, condescending twist of his mouth that made me want to put my fist through it. Slowly, he pulled a taser from his belt, holding it up like it was a loaded gun. Last warning, he said, voice low and dangerous. Stand down. My pulse hammered in my ears, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. This wasn't about an HOA violation. It had never been about that. This was intimidation, a power play. These guys weren't here to enforce some bullshit neighborhood guidelines. They were here to bully me into submission. You're not real cops, I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Buzzcut's smirk deepened. Try me. Titan's growling intensified, his body coiled like a loaded spring. His paws dug into the gravel, muscles taut and vibrating with restrained force. The younger guy shifted nervously, his eyes darting toward the gate. Maybe we should... Shut up, Buzzcut snapped, not even looking at him. He's just bluffing. Bluffing? My body moved before I could think. I lunged forward and slammed my shoulder into the younger guy's chest. He stumbled back, losing his balance, and went down hard into the garden bed. He gasped as his back hit the ground, the baton flying from his hand and landing in the dirt. Buzzcut's eyes widened as Titan's growling grew louder, more feral. His free hand slapped uselessly at the gravel, searching for leverage. Call off the dog! Buzzcut screamed, his voice ragged with panic. I stepped toward him, the tension in my chest boiling over into something cold and sharp. My eyes locked on his. He's protecting his home. Buzzcut's face twisted in rage. His mouth opened to say something, but Titan's growl silenced him. The sound was deep, primal, vibrating through the air like a promise. Buzzcut's face paled. He stopped struggling. His hand went limp at his side. Titan's teeth stayed buried in his arm. His amber eyes flicked toward me, waiting for the next command. Buzzcut's breath hitched. He knew exactly how close he was to losing more than just this fight. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. This is 911. I have 2 fake HOA cops trespassing on my property. One of them just tried to taser my dog. The younger guy's face drained of color. He stood up, holding his hands up. Look, man, we were just... Shut up! Buzzcut yelled. He was still pinned beneath Titan, his arm bleeding. We're just trying to enforce... Enforce what? I barked. A fake HOA? You think you're gonna get away with this? Buzzcut snarled. Titan's growling intensified. The younger guy backed away toward the gate. I didn't sign up for this, he muttered. Don't move, I said, pointing at him. You're not going anywhere. That's when the sound of sirens filled the air. The younger guy's eyes widened. He bolted for the gate, only to be tackled by 2 uniformed officers who stormed into the backyard. Buzzcut thrashed, but Titan's grip was iron. The officers drew their guns. Let him go! Release! I shouted. Titan immediately let go and retreated to my side, teeth bared. Buzzcut rolled onto his back, panting. The officers slapped handcuffs on both of them. Names? One of the officers asked. Buzzcut gritted his teeth. We were just following orders. Yeah? I said. From who? Silence. Turned out Buzzcut and his partner weren't HOA officers at all. They were running a scam, intimidating homeowners into paying bogus fines, targeting elderly residents and single mothers. They'd gotten away with it for over a year, but not this time. Buzzcut was charged with trespassing, attempted assault, and impersonating a law enforcement officer. His partner took a plea deal and testified against him in exchange for a lighter sentence. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the local HOA board. apologizing for the confusion and confirming that there was no official HOA enforcement division. I stood on my porch, Titan sitting at my feet, his ears perked up as the sun set over the neighborhood. "You earned this one, buddy," I said, scratching his head. Titan's tail thumped against the porch. A patrol car rolled by, the officer giving me a small nod. Buzzcut was in jail. His partner had flipped on him. Justice was served. Titan lay down beside me, his head resting on his paws. He let out a contented sigh. "Good boy," I whispered. "Good boy."